Here.
O'Malley?
Here.
Here.
Before we have the comments and suggestions, I have a presentation to make to Kelly Hanley. Could she come forward, please? I'm going to go out here so we can get
I come slow.
well, we want to get the council in on this. Oh yeah, we got to have a picture, Kelly. You and I are old. This is an appreciation award to Kelly Hanley in grateful recognition of your outstanding efforts and for more than a quarter of a century of service as the City of Hudson election inspector. December 15, 1980. Man, I was even young there. To August 15, 2006. Thank you so much. Kelly's husband was the clerk here for how many years? Somebody help me.
30-some.
30-some years. So it was kind of a family affair, right?
Well, no. I mean, this part. When he was city clerk,
They wouldn't let you do it?
He didn't want me to work down here.
Oh.
I figured I could be watching what he was doing.
Yeah. I have the same comments from my wife. Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed working with all the other election officials and really enjoyed working with Mains.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in our agenda, we take comments and suggestions from citizens present on any topic that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to approach or make contact with the council on anything? Anyone? Once more. Okay. Seeing none, well, let's go to the consent agenda items marked with C, and Madam Clerk will vocalize those for us.
To approve the regular meeting minutes and closed session minutes of August 21st, 2006. To approve the final plat of Red Cedar Canyon Whitetail Ridge contingent on the execution of a development agreement with Hans Hagen Homes and the City of Hudson, and with the city attorney to address the issue of payment of impact fees in the development. To approve the 3-lot certified survey map for lots on Leonard's Road in the town of Hudson as proposed by Mick Howland, the Dry Dock LLC. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $690,150.12. A detailed description is available in the clerk's office for inspection. To approve the issuance of regular operators licenses for the period September 6, 2006 to June 30, 2008 to Jennifer Ostrander, Hudson, Wisconsin, and Lynn Schultz, Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota. To approve the annual St. Patrick's Church Fall Fest 5K run to begin at 9 a.m. on Saturday, September 16, 2006, with the event to begin at the high school and end in St. Patrick's Church parking lot. To approve the request of Karen Dukow for barricades for a block party at the end of the cul-de-sac in Stone Pine Court 1 on Sunday, September 10, 2006, from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. To place on file the quarterly report of the city clerk and the Community Access Board minutes of August 22, 2006. That is all.
What is your pleasure on the consent?
Move for approval. Second.
Roll call vote.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Cook? Yes. Rademacher?
Yes.
O'Connell?
Yes.
Morissette?
Yes. Motion is carried. Let's go to Finance Committee 5. Request to have former hospital site surveyed to determine the property lines for the proposed purchase of property. City Attorney and Community Development Director. Recommendation from Finance is to proceed with that determination.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I believe there's a cap on that of no more than $4,000.
That's right. That's right. That was my motion. I forgot.
I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We reviewed the long-term capital improvement plan and financing needs, which all the requests were not in, so we're holding that over until the next meeting. Quite a few requests. I think you all in your packets received a letter from Devin indicating where we are as of this date, which looked kind of gloomy, but we'll certainly make the proper changes so that we can fit well into our limitations on budgeting. Proposed issuance of the $1,050,000 general obligation promissory notes for purchase of future park property, resolution number 1106. I'm going to ask Betty to explain that to the television audience in an executive summary so that they know just where those monies are coming from.
This is the proposed temporary financing for the purchase of the property, the future park property. What we're doing is bridging that amount of money that we need at this point until we would receive any grant funds. So we don't want to go out on long-term financing. So I requested a bid from 2 of the local banks. Got a favorable bid from First National Bank, and so the resolution includes the repayment schedule over a 3-year period. We're paying interest at 4.75%. and semi-annual interest, and it has an open clause that we can prepay it at any time. So should we get any grant funds in, we can pay it off at that point. If not, 3 years out, we can get permanent financing for that.
So, Councilor, we don't need any motions on that?
Motion to suspend the rules for
Okay,
resolution.
let's go ahead with that.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Move to adopt resolution number 11-06.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Review quotes received and consider purchase of the speed monitor display sign. And again, Sergeant Marty, why don't you, for the council and TV audience, give us a brief description of our choice.
Well, I went and got estimates from the 3 companies that had given us quotes in regards to the speed trailer that we had gotten. And taking a look at the quotes, I had told them I wanted to try to keep this under $3,000 per unit. And taking a look at the quotes I got, the one I'm going to recommend is from Public Safety Equipment Company in regards to their speed monitoring device. It's a 16-inch display board versus a 12-inch. I would recommend that we go with a battery-operated system. In talking with the owner of the company, he said that the display board can come with brackets that will fit on 4x4 posts, so we can take these units and move them to different locations within the city. So we can take this unit, put it on a 4x4 post right underneath the speed sign, and people are going to see it. So we don't have to permanently mount it in one location, and we can move it throughout the neighborhoods that are having complaints of speeding in their area. With the larger display sign, obviously it's going to be much easier to see. The one thing I did get, I don't know if it's in everybody's packet, I talked to him in regards to their warranty. They gave us a 2-year warranty on all parts except the radar unit itself. They only gave us a 1-year limited warranty on that, and that is because the company that supplies the radar unit only allows them a 1-year warranty on that. So it's 2 and everything else in 1 on that. So it's in between 2 of the other bids. However, because of the size, I felt this would probably be the better unit to get. Do the mounting brackets come with some sort of locking mechanism? I believe they do, so that you can lock it onto the post and so forth, so it won't come off.
So rather than just bolting it on so somebody couldn't come by
And take it off, correct.
Well, I think we could just buy triangular-headed bolts, which take a special wrench. That's,
Well, Ken, that's Jim's department, not mine.
Marty, how long will it be before we get these?
I'm hoping to get them within the next month. I want to get them in before winter hits. So as soon as I get permission from the council to order them, I will do so.
Recommendation is to proceed and the monies to be taken out of the contingency.
I move that we do approve purchase of 2 of these units for a total of $5,620, money to come out of contingency.
I'll second that motion.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next item is consider proposed increase in attorney fees for 2007. You've got a write-up from Devin. The increase, if you average over the 4 years since the last increase, equals to 2.77 per annum. Increase. Recommendation from finances to proceed.
Second.
Discussion or comments? We did have an unusual year last year where we had a couple of investigations, which kind of brought our legal financial costs up, but in a normal year, we're talking somewhere from $50,000 to $60,000 is what Devin was saying.
I'd like to point out that the increase that we're giving is less than the average cost of living.
Cost of living, right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Proposal for temporary facility for the EMS personnel. Recommendation from Finance is for them to proceed to investigate and bring back details before we make the final approval. Did I miss anything on that?
No.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. They're really cramped. They lost their one room to a supply, I believe. Of course, they've evacuated the area, so I can't really get down to any specific questions, but they are cramped, and I think that what they're proposing is well within their budget, and they assure me that they're not going to change that budget or increase that budget in the coming year, so.
They also lost their space at the hospital.
Oh, that's right.
There was an area they were allowing them to use there, and the hospital has claimed that for the ER doctors. So.
Need a motion to approve of the recommendation from Finance.
We had that already.
Oh, all in favor? I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to jump to the back page, and we have a proposed ordinance regulating sexual offenders and predators, ordinance number 1306. Before we make that decision, I'd like to introduce Mike O'Keefe and Joe Fitzpatrick, right? Who will give us the latest on what's happening in Madison, and also kind of give us a summary on what's happening today as far as the registry is concerned. Did I miss anything, Mike or Joe?
No, I think that's right. I think that's
okay.
Pretty good, Mayor.
Joe will start. Mike O'Keefe is the son of our former Public Works Director, and Mike has spent some time in northern Wisconsin and is now the
Supervisor for the Probation and Parole Office
here in
St. Croix County.
St. Croix County.
Correct.
And Joe, maybe you want to tell us your, I forgot your particular title, and I apologize for that.
That's okay. My name is Joe Fitzpatrick. I'm a sex offender registration specialist for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. I cover northwestern Wisconsin from Trempealeau County up to Douglas County for the department. The position which I took approximately 6 years ago is a new position for this part of the state. And my primary responsibilities are to deal with registry issues, answer questions of law enforcement, locate those individuals who are non-compliant with the sex offender registry, and I guess the laundry list is pretty long, but those are primarily my my responsibilities and duties. What I want to open with tonight is just a brief overview of how currently the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, specifically the sex offender registry, is managing sex offenders in Wisconsin. As you know, the sex offender registry began in 1997. It was retroactive back to 1993, December 25th, 1993. So when it came online in 97, there were over 10,000 registered offenders initially in the state of Wisconsin. The law has, there have been some additions to the Wisconsin sex offender registry laws to strengthen it. Obviously, as time passes, we have a number of more registrants coming online, as well as some of them dropping off the registry. But we currently have in the state of Wisconsin about 18,708 registered sex offenders on the Wisconsin registry. There are 5,442 currently incarcerated in prison, and on Probation or parole supervision, there are 4,994 currently on supervision. If you quickly did the math, you will know that the number of registered sex offenders off supervision is 8,272. And that is primarily, that is the population that I deal with, is those terminated offenders no longer on supervision. Those terminated offenders who are no longer on supervision are required to at least on a yearly basis, oftentimes more, let us know their residence, employment, and or school information. That information is then placed out on the sex offender registry website and is made available to not only the public but law enforcement. It's for anyone who has internet access or can go to the library and see the Wisconsin Sex Offender Registry, which can be searched by either name or zip code. In the case of Hudson, you could do a zip code search of it and get all the registered offenders, their names, their addresses of where they live within that zip code, and very other basic information. What the law enforcement website differs from the public website in that it provides a lot more information to the Hudson Police Department. It includes a lot more detailed information about these individuals, including juvenile registrants. Juvenile registrants will not appear on the public website because of the confidential nature of their adjudications.
That's a quick question though.
Sure.
How many do you have in St. Croix County registered, and how many do you have in the city of Hudson?
I did not run the numbers for the county of St. Croix. There are, what do we say, Mike?
16.
16.
How many?
There are 16 registered offenders in the Hudson zip code. And that includes, obviously, outside of...
I think we talked about maybe six in the city.
Six would be in the city, I believe.
Right.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Law enforcement does a very good job at, from what I've seen, identifying these individuals in the community, identifying those individuals who have moved into the community and who haven't reported or signed up with the registry. And it has resulted in me spending a significant amount of time in court testifying in prelims after they've, preliminary hearings after they've made referrals for a violation of the law. A violation of the sex offender registry law is a Class H felony punishable by up to 6 years incarceration. And I have, in the past few months, spent a significant amount of time here in the county dealing with court matters. I work very well with the police department. They have pretty much taken this on, a lot of it on themselves, and when they've needed to, got me involved, but their finding or discovering unregistered sex offenders in the city has been going very well for them.
In council, we'll hear from Ed Rankin after these gentlemen have finished their presentation.
I guess without going through my whole notes, I guess that is pretty much the highlight of what I have to say this evening.
Can I ask one question? You said
Sure.
6 years in prison. So if this is a person that's on supervision, that's within the city and caught, they'd go back to jail. If it's a person who's off supervision but hasn't registered, what's the penalty?
Well, it's 3 years probation, and it is 6 years in prison. It's a Class H felony, which means they could go to prison for 3 years, and they'd have to come out and do supervision for 3 years.
Okay. So even if they're off supervision, they must register?
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Yep. There are 29 registrable offenses out there on the books, ranging from first-degree sexual assault of an adult or child, all the way down to discretionary registrable offenses such as lewd and lascivious behavior or voyeurism, that sort of thing. So it runs the whole gamut of the type of sex offenses that are registrable. if you are convicted of first or second degree sexual assault of a child or an adult or repeated sexual acts, you are to register with the Wisconsin Sex Offender Registry for your lifetime. If you have 2 or more adult convictions for a registrable offense, you have to register with the Wisconsin Sex Offender Registry for your lifetime. All of the other 27, excuse me, my math is bad, the other 24 registrable offenses on the books, you have to register for at least 15 years beyond your discharge from probation or parole supervision. So what we have is a large number of these folks having to register for their lifetime.
How many sex offenders are not registered, would you guess, in the state of Wisconsin and or St. Croix County?
We just had a study that was released, and Wisconsin has an 88% compliance rate currently.
88%?
Yeah.
That's one of the highest in the nation.
One of the highest in the nation.
And currently all sex offenders are required to register if they meet those requirements that you just talked about?
Yes, if they...
That's the law that says that?
Yes, yep, and they're failing to register is a Class H felony, as was discussed. Or if it's discovered that, for instance, they give a false address and it's discovered through a simple traffic stop. An officer might pull over a registered sex offender who tells him that he lives at 123 Main Street, when in fact the officer gets the paperwork back and sees, wait, he's registered at 456 4th Street. So the individual is then either obstructing an officer or in violation of the sex offender registry. And that's another good place where the police, when they have contact with these folks, follow up with things such as their address. So if they provide incorrect information to the registry, it's also a Class H felony.
Have you read through our proposed ordinance, and what are your thoughts?
Entirely. I have not entirely. I have glanced over it. At this time, the Department of Corrections is not going to give an opinion on your ordinance. I guess the main reason that I'm here is to answer any questions that you might have about the sex offender registry in Wisconsin, and hopefully maybe debunk any myths that might be out there also.
And Paul, part of the reason was to find out what Joe does, what Mike does, and what Ed does, and then after that particular third presentation, we can give ourselves some direction on how we move, and they're also going to give us an update of what's happening on Madison, where they're looking for something that would be a state universal ordinance. So why don't we hear from, if you have any questions of Joel, let's hear from Mike and what he does.
Thank you. Currently, there's a study group that was assigned on the placement of sex offenders. I don't know if you got a copy of that around or not, but as you can see, Catherine asked me to call Madison and ask when this might be done. They got back to me and they said that they're going to have their first meeting on September the 14th, I believe, and they should have some findings by about January. So this isn't one of those study groups that's going to linger out there for a long period of time. Currently, we have about 6, I believe, sex offenders registered in the city of Hudson that is supervised by the Probation and Parole Office. We have 10 probation and parole agents assigned to St. Croix County. I've got about 3 that cover Hudson and North Hudson. Most of the work seems to be here. There's about 100 people on probation or parole. Something that I should bring out is we've also got another 46 people that live in the city or around the city. They're also considered to us to be sex offenders. They're not registered, but they have a sexual history, and we treat those people as sex offenders. Our directives say that if you've got a sex history, we're going to supervise you like a sex offender. So we do the things like before we allow them to move to a specific area, we go through and we check daycares, licensed daycares, schools, parks, and things like that. Those are things that we do for the people that are on supervision.
What happens if some guy wants to move next to a school?
We just won't let them. Okay. Simply won't let them. If they come out of court and they're placed on probation, however, and they're living next to a park or a licensed daycare, I'm hard-pressed at that point to make him move if he's been there for 20 years or something like that. But if he likes to change his residence, then we do preclude them from doing that right now. So that's something we do already. And I think I passed, I showed you a form that we do. We kind of our residents checklist to make sure we cover all the bases.
Why wouldn't those 46 people be registered? Who makes and determines that decision?
It's done statutorily, like Joe said, according to their crimes, if they have to register.
So it's a different level of offense than what your level 1, 2, 3 to your
Yes. You know, many times you'll have sex offenders that maybe committed a second-degree sexual assault. That's what they were charged with. But because of plea agreements and other things, victims not available to testify or victims not wanting to go through the court system or through a trial, sometimes there'll be charged something less and convicted of something much less. So that happens a lot.
Okay, any questions of Mike before Ed's going to give us a little summary of how he interfaces it with this whole thing so that we get the 3 levels of enforcement, so to speak. And then maybe if you wanted to say something, fine.
I was here for the public safety and talked with some of the individuals here, and then we met with Joe and Mike. We work actually very closely, all 3 of us together. I mean, there's not a month that goes by that we don't check in with probation, parole, that we don't talk with Joe. Myself and the 2 detectives, Jeff and Sean, regularly check the sex offender registry. We want to know who's in town, make sure they're being compliant, make sure the ones, and again, we have 6 that are living in the city limits, and all 6 are on probation or supervision. We don't have any that are on the registry living in the city limits who are off supervision. Not to say that that can't happen, but we would know that just because they're on the registry. So we check the registry. We make sure that, especially with the new ones coming out of jail, Mike gets a hold of us, and says, we got a guy coming out. I noticed someone on the registry, and I said, where's he going to be living? And if you look on the registry, you'll notice his address is the St. Croix County Jail. Mike is very diligent about, like I said, his background checks and where they're going to be placed. And if there isn't someplace, then they stay in jail until they can find someplace suitable. And again, with Joe, we work very closely with him. Our officers are always watching. When you run anybody, you run a traffic stop or anything, and you run a history on them, traffic history or anything, if they're non-compliant from any state in the country, it shows up on that. And it will say very clearly that this is a registered sex offender who is either compliant or non-compliant. And in the last year, we've had several that just on basic contacts, whether it was a domestic, a criminal damage property that they were the victim, by running them, we were able to determine that they were sex offenders and they were non-compliant from another state. And they were arrested. And those are the ones Joe's talking about spending time in court. And by the way, he wasn't complaining about that. I mean, we get along very well, in that, we call Joe and also as a backup to that, the district attorney is very supportive of us charging these guys and going ahead through court. One of the individuals was non-compliant from Tennessee, and he committed a sexual assault of a child here in Hudson. And it was actually easier and better for the district attorney to run it through on the felony as a repeater, as a non-compliant sex offender, than put the victim through the court process. And he was sent back to prison. So these are things that we're pretty diligent about. We're constantly on the lookout if someone is in town. But that doesn't mean, whether we have the ordinance or not have the ordinance, that people are going to move to the state of Wisconsin from other states that aren't going to register. And those are the ones that Joe or us or anyone else won't know about until by chance we meet them and we run them and we find out who they are. And at that point, we're going to take the action of the Class H felony. If we had both, if we had the ordinance and the non-compliant felony statute, of course we're going to run them through the district attorney and we're going to charge them with a felony.
Any questions, Ed? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I've heard how you feel about this ordinance, and I know you're opposed to it. Why?
I think what we have going right now is working. I really do. I mean, we know who's in our town, and they're being compliant. They're on probation. They're on supervision. Their supervision is very strict. One of them tried to get a library card and, was put back in jail and explained, you can't have a library card because you can't go on the internet there. I mean, they're that restrictive of these individuals. I also see the difficulties for the police department in enforcing an ordinance such as this. The person that does come from another state who's non-compliant, like I said, we're going to go to the Class H felony. We're not going to charge him with that.
Would it not raise that red flag? Because the whole purpose I brought this ordinance up was specifically to prevent any more people like this coming into the city of Hudson.
Well, and I think one of the other, I understand what you're also doing, Randy, and your intention, but I think as Mike was saying, there are individuals living all over the city of Hudson who have committed sex offenses who this ordinance will not affect. You're not going to keep, sex offenders out of the city with an ordinance. I don't believe that.
I can certainly raise the red flag that they're not welcome in the city of Hudson. As far as I'm concerned, once they do that, once they've sexually offended on anybody, in my mind, they've lost their right of anything. And it's my job to protect the kids and the adults in this city.
And I think that's my job too, and I think we're doing that. I really do. I think we're doing a pretty good job of knowing who's in town, taking enforcement action when it's needed, not just law enforcement, but probation and Joe, and it's a team effort. But
well, the reason we have these three gentlemen here is to, one, review what's happening today, to overlay what's going to happen in Madison, and first meeting in September, probably some final in January, so that, number one, should we pass an ordinance that maybe is going to be out of compliance if we get the one from Madison? Or are we going to be subject to change of that? And also, at this particular time, once we have the ordinance, can we really take care of that ordinance by making sure that we have the officers who are going to make sure that ordinance is adhered to? Now, Ed, I want to thank you for that presentation. I don't know if they have any more questions of you, and they probably have.
Yeah. Could any of you, we've gotten examples from Minnesota, we've gotten examples from Iowa. Can anybody comment on the difference in how Wisconsin handles these cases versus how Iowa or Minnesota handles the cases?
you mean the cases of the ordinance or
The
of the
cases
sex
of
offenders?
sexual offenders, and how sexual offenders are handled differently in those states, or are they the same?
I think probably every state has a different, I mean, like ours is a Class H felony if you're non-compliant. I would imagine in most states they are, but those can be different. How they track their sex offenders, I'm not sure either. I think that's the biggest difficulty we face in the whole country, is just that each state has their own individual sex offender registry. And if they leave, you know, he told you how many thousands there are living in the state, or that are registered in the state of Wisconsin, how many of those are actually living here, and how many of them are leaving and living. How many come from other states and live here that we don't know about. As far as the enforcement action, I would think that most of them are watching, probably not as diligent. I mean, if we have an 88% success, you know, and compliant rate, that goes to show just how diligent, not just Hudson, but the entire state is, and the district attorneys and the judges and the probation and everybody working together.
So, go ahead, Ed. You stated that the loophole here is that if somebody moves in from an offender moves in from out of state, not necessarily going to be registered, but what this ordinance does do, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if someone who is registered, it will say to them, you can't live in Hudson. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I guess if they're on probation, all right, if we have this ordinance, and if they're out of prison, they're on probation, and they come to their probation agent and say, we want to live in Hudson, they're going to say no. Right. They won't allow them to break.
That's what the ordinance will do.
They won't allow them to break a law, an ordinance. The ones who are off probation that move here, they have to give the address change. And how many days do they have, Joe, to do that change of address?
They have 10 days in which to notify us of a change of address.
Okay, so the problem I see, you know, is people moving into the city, you know, renting, buying a house, doing whatever, then 10 days later notifying Joe, and Joe notifying us saying, oh, by the way, John Smith moved from Tennessee, he bought a house, and he's just notified us that he's living in the city. So now he's not in violation of the sex offender registry because he's notified them of his address change, but he's in violation of our ordinance. And again, the difficulty there is going to be ordinance punishable. I mean, this is where, you know, your city attorney has to advise us. It's a fine every day you're here. where do we go from there? Do we go to eviction? Do we, you know, I see a real problem with enforcing an ordinance when a person has, you know, moved here.
Especially when there isn't an ordinance that anyone else has in the entire state of Wisconsin. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is no other city that has an ordinance.
What this
It's
does,
not been tested in Wisconsin. That's just the fact.
what this ordinance would do is if someone's a sex offender, they register and they go to Mike and say, I want to live in Hudson, Mike would say, no, you cannot do that.
Right.
That's what this would
That's the
do.
key point.
Or would they come to us, our police department, because the ordinance is here? Why would they go to Mike, is what I'm trying to understand.
Well, when they're on supervision, they have to report to their probation agent.
to Mike.
Right, and when they're on supervision, one of their other provisions of being on the sex offender registry and they're on supervision is they have to do a face-to-face with law enforcement. I guess that's one of the concerns that I've read from Department of Corrections and that, and again, they're not having a position on it, I understand that, but is that these people, instead of going to, you know, if they want to live here, instead of going to probation, parole, instead of registering, they're just going to come here and live, and they're going to basically go undercover. They're going to hide. They're going to, you know, go underground, and no one will know they're here, and no, you know, they'll just stop being on probation.
Could I ask a question regarding that? I have two relatives who basically do what you do. One is the parole officer, and the other one is as a superintendent in charge of intake. And I've spoken to both of them about this. And regarding our 88% registration figure here in Wisconsin, which, as you mentioned, is far above the, I think it's 74 or 76% nationally, their opinion was that an ordinance, if enforced, would simply drive these people off the radar screen, and they would simply stop registering and just move. Do you agree with that?
I guess that kind of calls for assumptions, you know, and opinions. And
I know that you don't want to
right.
give a...
Well, and the ones who we've seen here, you know, who have come from other states and not registered, I don't think, you know, an ordinance would have scared them to do that. Sure. We have people who are just going to not report because they don't want anyone knowing where they are, and probably because they're going to offend again. And again, an ordinance isn't going to change that, and, you know, in those that do come here and they're living here and we catch them, we're going to charge them with the felony anyway.
So my second question is that the paperwork we received from our city attorney, from Catherine, allows recognition of the strength of a support group, family unit, that it is best if these offenders do live in a situation where they have support. And as I read the ordinance as currently drafted, a family member, a wife, a brother, a relative could move to Hudson, buy the house or rent the apartment, and the next day the offender could move in with the family member legitimately, correct? So this would not stop any offender from moving to Hudson if they have a family member who wants to live with them.
Right. That was actually one of the exceptions that I told Catherine that I thought really should go. To be honest with you, I didn't think that exception should be a part of the ordinance because of that reason that you just said. I mean, it's very easy for someone to say, I'm going to live with my son, my adult son. Sure. I think the intent of that was for the juvenile offenders. You know, the 17-year-olds who are still living at home needs the support of their parents in that. But the way it's worded right now with the exceptions, yeah, an offender, the most violent offender, you know, that he could move in with his grandparents, his father, his kids, his wife, whatever.
But you said also, if that person was on probation or registered, we would be able to, through the rules.
I wouldn't allow that.
Right.
If he was on probation or parole, and even if he had that support group, say next to a daycare, licensed daycare, or a park or something like that, I wouldn't allow it.
But we have to remember that those people aren't on probation and parole forever. I mean, we're seeing longer terms, which is also a good thing. Mike is saying he's seeing longer terms of probation and supervision, but I've had two people register in the last year. They came and did a face-to-face and actually live outside the city limits, but their offenses were in 1981. They've been off probation parole for many, many years. And, you know, those people, you know, would not. I mean, if he had a grandson here, he could have lived across the street from EP Rock.
But he couldn't live here if, in the face-to-face, if we had the ordinance, you would have to tell him that you can't.
Well, yeah, without that exception, if you remove that exception. Right.
Do you have an
Yeah, let me-
overlay to add?
Well, just with respect to that exception, would be a policy consideration for the council to make, and the purpose of putting it in there was just, it's a protective mechanism to address some of the concerns the courts have raised regarding these ordinances, in that one of the concerns has been it deprives the sexual offenders of potential rehabilitative type environments. So that would be entirely a council determination. I think the main thing that I have gleaned from speaking with both Ed and the two, Mike and Joe, is that there is quite a bit of supervision right now and follow-up and monitoring. The concern about people not registering is very real, and you have to remember that the city can't adopt an ordinance just, we don't want sex offenders in our city. The whole rationale behind this ordinance and the basis on which it would rise or fall is that the ordinance reasonably regulates sex offenders for the protection of the children. So it's not a matter of let's adopt an ordinance so we can keep them out of our city. If that's the reason for the ordinance, you're going to have trouble in litigation with its validity. It's got to be reasonably regulated to protect children. Even then, the situation in Wisconsin is we don't have any law that has said it's valid or not valid. I think the other real important piece is that the legislature is looking at this, and we're going to have some kind of information coming out of the state with respect to, I'm assuming, recommendations on how these people should be placed in communities, and real solid information on what's happening in communities statewide. So the other piece of it is enforcement. As Ed said, they're going to go with the felony offense. Trying to enforce it at this local level would involve first trying to get voluntary compliance, unknown whether that would work. The other thing is daily fines. The third thing would be going into court and getting an order that this person has to move, and that's where the validity of the ordinance is likely to be contested.
I'd like to say, excuse me, I just don't think that repeat sex offenders can ever be cured, but I think they can be contained. And things that we have at our disposal, and I think the best thing to do is get these people put back on probation. We use things like polygraphs, we use things like surveillance with the police. There's just all kinds of things we can do. Good old-fashioned police work is a lot of what this boils down to. And I think our goal here is really no more victims. We can't undo what these people have done, but I think if we don't have any more victims, and I want to give you an example that I think hits home. I did a computer search of a sex offender, and basically what I found was child pornography that was taken not here, but at a local soccer field. And that sex offender did not live anywhere near that soccer field. Actually, he came from somewhere outside of that city. And these were just local kids who had no idea their pictures were being taken. The parents thought basically this was a parent taking pictures of the soccer game. Now, these things are happening all around us, and as much as you can pass this ordinance, I don't want to see something like this take the place of what parents should be doing. I don't want to see a false sense of security out there that now I know there's no sex offenders living around my block, my child can drive around the block. As much as I hate to say it, those days are probably gone for us. And I grew up in this city, so my mother kicked me out in the morning and saw me at night sometime, but we can't do that anymore. Mr. Morissette, I understand your concerns, and I agree with a lot of them. I really do. I raised 3 children of my own, but I think it's in our best interest to know these people, know where they're at, know where they work, know where they live, and just do what a parent should be doing, educating yourself.
I was impressed with what you 3 gentlemen do, and I was greatly impressed with our police force and the involvement that they have on a daily basis. A lot of people just think you write tickets. But Ed, I was impressed with your presentation, both earlier and tonight, of how involved you get with Mike and also with Joe, and most importantly, the vigilance that you put forward as it relates to the registered ones we have in the city and any potentials that you pick up on on just an arrest that you have on maybe a daily basis. I was very impressed with that, and I'm also impressed with how much surveillance we have today. The council has to make a decision on whether they want to pass this ordinance. If we do that now, it may be premature as it relates to what they're doing in the state, or it may not. But we still have to subject ourselves to that particular issue when it comes up.
I'm certainly willing to table this motion or ordinance until after the state meets and you gentlemen come back and give us another presentation.
I'll second that. Table it.
Discussion?
Well, of course, you're assuming that in Madison, they're going to do the right thing.
Well, that's why I want them to come back.
Well, we're also assuming that we're going to do the right thing.
That's true. But, I mean, I guess the question the question I had was, I mean, how does this ordinance hurt what you're doing now, or does it help it? I mean, really, I mean, all this ordinance does is say, for any new registered offenders that want to locate here, it just says, no, you can't. So does it really change what you're doing now?
I think that this ordinance will create a lot of calls for service and a lot of extra work for the police department.
That's that and our attorney.
And your city attorney. And if the ordinance is passed, it'll be very difficult on the police department. That's how I feel. And certainly, if you're going to do that, then maybe allocate some more resources to the police department.
In response to that, I would just comment that it's the outcome of the local efforts are not as likely to be as beneficial as the outcome of the efforts by Department of Corrections enforcing violations of the registry laws and getting people on probation and so forth. It's not just a matter of extra work. I know the police department does a lot of work right now, but it's what is going to be the benefit of that extra work. And at this point, I question that because of the difficulty of enforcement of the ordinance versus the enforcing the registry laws and the penalties or remedies for violating the registry laws. You're going to get something with teeth and meat in it. And I do have some concern about sending people underground, which would be counterproductive to both agencies, Department of Corrections and Police Department. The nice thing about this study is hopefully that it will come up with some information on what is happening and maybe how these types of ordinances have affected registry laws in other states.
Do you know when you'd get that information disseminated to you folks?
Yes.
Because I'm going to bring this back up regardless of what comes up. So hopefully we could schedule you into an October meeting after they have all that information. Is that
They're going to have their first meeting.
First meeting in
and they thought that they had to get something back to the legislature by January.
Oh, so we'd have to postpone it longer?
If you want to wait for the findings, I mean, I could find out what, where their starting point at, what progress they're making, or what direction they're taking. I could find those things out.
I know this has been difficult for you, Mr. Morissette, and I admire you for bringing up that suggestion as far as delay is concerned. And maybe that's the right thing to do, and we'll find out in a few minutes when we vote. Are we ready for the question, or what? All in favor of Mr. Morissette's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
If you'd like me back in October, I'll certainly do that.
I do.
To give us an update. Could you do that, Mike?
Sure. Yeah.
I want to really thank you guys for taking this opportunity to, with so much research and so much information. And Ed, I think your presentation to the TV audience this evening is going to make a lot of our constituents a feeling of safety. Appreciate all you guys do.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go back to the first page. We had the engineers update on projects. That was a very healthy discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
Very informative.
Angela?
So actually, I don't have a whole lot to say. Basically, it was a pretty...
Until we ask questions,
Yeah, I
right?
know, that's what I figured. It was a pretty quiet few weeks, actually, before Labor Day, so really, Hanley Road Storm Sewer, actually, they began today. They started some erosion control previous week, but they're actually beginning today. And the Riverwalk Park Shelter is out for public bids, so you probably have seen that advertisement in the paper.
Angela, let me ask you a question about our stormwater, because we had quite a sizable rain just a couple of days ago. Was there any adverse effects that we should be noted when people call?
We definitely had flooding on that Thursday, August 24th. The usual areas, obviously, Nye-Aldridge area flooded,
Right.
4th, 5th, Elm area flooded, and then 5th Street right near Willow Elementary, I think, had some severe flooding. And I'm looking at Jim because I know he was out and about as well.
How did our temporary do up here by
Actually,
Islands?
I was talking to the neighbors, and it seemed to make a very significant difference. What we would have probably gotten 16 to 18 inches of water, we probably got about 6 inches, 7 inches in the same area.
That was rather heavy downpour.
Yeah, we were expecting to see a lot more flooding. So I think it made a difference until Elm flooded, and then it started coming back down. But overall, it made a big difference.
I met separately with Jim and Angela as it relates to the budget and some of the proposals that they're going to make for bonding as it relates to the stormwater problems that we have and some of the monies we may have to spend to solve this.
Get those solved.
So they're going to bring that forth.
Just on Ward Avenue and 13th is one of those, right in front of the whole Plaza 94 flooded. A couple
Yes.
of cars died in there, so.
That industrial flooded south of Fleet Farm.
Locust had flooding during the rain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Locust, obviously, yes. We saw that in the front page of the newspaper.
On 6th coming down, that came
Held out,
through.
yeah.
That was perfect, so at least.
Well, that was a good engineering feat there that we did on Walnut. That was an excellent job.
So,
I have a question for you.
yes.
When they tear up Hanley up there, it's going to be about a 2-block stretch, right?
Basically, it's actually 300 feet, so it's about a 1-block stretch, yes.
Can we extend that blacktop path that's on the south side of Hanley down when we repair the curb and everything on that side? Can we bring that walking path down another 300 feet?
I had not looked at that, and trying to think of what's in the right-of-way there, if that's possible or not, but I can look
We put it on
at
that side because there's not supposed to be any utilities on that side.
Yep, and it does dead end pretty much right where we're picking up the storm sewer and
Yeah.
continuing on, so
Could you look at that?
I had not looked at that.
I don't think it would be that much more as long as it's going to be dug up already.
And probably timing-wise, I could bring that back at the next council meeting and still have time for them, to pave.
That'd be great.
As far as coordinating that with
Any
paving,
chance
if
we
that's
can get
possible.
to keep extending that, I think we...
I will follow up on that.
Good suggestion, Mr. Khan.
Our triple left turn lane, it says plans are being prepared. That means
Plans are being prepared, however, in your capital improvements, the cost, right now, the estimated cost is about $95,000. So, for the triple left, it's for the new mast arm, the changes that are needed to the light, the signals system, changes that are needed to medians and which affects storm sewer in that area, and then obviously the striping of the triple left.
We'll bring that all to you.
So,
Have finalized,
yeah.
try to finalize the budget.
So we have the cost estimate now, so that's where it was put into the list of potential capital improvements that you need to consider. So it's, obviously, as stated, it's not just restriping, unfortunately.
Angela, could I ask you a question regarding that issue?
That's fine.
Because I couldn't help but remark, the other day I was in, just off 94 south on, frankly, I can't remember the name of the road. going back in '94, I was in a situation exactly like we have at Carmichael Crestview. There were 2 left turn lanes, there was a straight ahead lane, there was a right turn lane, and there was no striping of any kind, no markings of any kind on the road surface, and everything seemed to go very, very smoothly. You have, this is, if I've only passed this road for 30 years, so I ought to know the name of it, but if you go off to, there's a Sam's Club there, it's in Woodbury.
In Woodbury.
Yeah, Woodbury Drive.
County Road 19 and...
Yeah.
County Road 19.
County Road 19.
Yeah,
and there is no striping of any kind, and I've been there a lot, and I've never seen anybody have a fender bender either. Do we need striping? Because we've been talking a lot about the expense of permanent striping. We repaint every 6 months because it gets worn down. Yet there is a analogous situation just off of 94, as we are here,
Yep.
with no striping whatsoever, and I've seen it work beautifully day after day after day after day.
That'd be interesting because obviously striping is, some kind of traffic control is needed as far as keeping people in lanes, and I'd be
Could I speak
interested
to that
to
point?
find out how that would work.
I wonder, excuse me, I didn't mean to
Nope,
interrupt.
I'm sorry, keep going.
I wonder if perhaps the striping, as other traffic controls, are maybe as partly a hindrance. Because I had an event a couple of years ago when our striping was shiny and new and looked great, and a gentleman in a truck swore, well, he was quite literally swearing quite a bit, because he swore that I had crossed over into his lane, when in fact I just followed the striping around. And maybe the striping confuses people. I'm just putting this out there because...
And you're specifically saying around a corner.
Around the corner.
Okay, not...
Exactly the same turn
Okay,
that I was
I'm
making
sorry.
with no striping whatsoever off of 94 on County Road 19.
How did you know you could turn from that?
Oh, you have the overhead signals.
Okay, so the overhead, all right.
Yeah. Well, you just didn't have the striping, and nobody seemed to get in anybody else's way.
And the striping is not, especially with this triple left, the biggest thing is the signage and the medians and the change of signal systems.
Is the
It may
lights.
end up
The
doing
expense
exactly
is
what
the
you're
light,
saying once
yeah.
you get the signage.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it out so that
Actually-
you might take a
Okay,
look at it.
no, that's fine, okay.
Because we've talked a
I'm
lot about how to make the striping
confused.
permanent and that
Yep.
sort of thing. Maybe we don't need striping. I don't know.
Okay,
But I know
no.
it works at this other intersection.
Well,
I thought
can
you
give
would like to look at that.
I can give you a preview that we're looking at a lot of capital project bonding if we approve all that's coming in. And so get ready. You also did get a communication from Devin indicating where we are and the inability to increase our budget more than $125,000. So capital projects, we will have to take a scrutinizing look at these and put some priorities on each one of the requests. And you'll all be part of that.
One more question. Sure. When will we be starting the Vine Street corridor study?
We wanted to wait, obviously, until school started and get the traffic patterns, but we want to still wait another week so traffic kind of gets in their general routine of what's happening. So basically, in another week to 2 weeks, we'll start the study, so.
Because there's going to be an avoidance curve there also.
Right, the first first week is still chaos, and then people start getting into their general routine, so that's when we would like to start that and get, approximately in 2 weeks, we'll
Great.
be
Got
doing that full
schedule
force.
anyway. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to B, the update on fuel bids and costs for 2006, 2007.
You got your letter.
You want to...
Jim, maybe you can explain, you had the conversation with, this is in regards to last month when the fuel bids came in and there was concern that the prices were going down and how...
The price has gone down about 40 cents.
So I've talked to Jim, and Jim talked to the people from Consolidated, and...
Basically, what they've done, their bid is priced on margin. So how the fuel prices float, and then we're on a, with the electronic, our tanks are monitored when they get so low. This sends a signal to them, and we know we have then 4 days worth of fuel left. so they can kind of watch the fuel prices, whatever, to, minimize the impact on us. So, I mean, the thing is, they're gonna make, the same regardless of how the fuel prices go. So, I mean, I guess my recommendation is to award it. They're doing what they can to keep our costs down, and I think we're best served by this because it floats, their margin is fixed. I mean, it's not a percentage, it's X number of cents per gallon. Yeah.
But it was good to know that.
Right.
Rather than just the naked bid that we had received. The thing that's always interesting to me is who calls the stations in the morning to change that price?
They obviously called everybody.
I know, that's quite a system.
It's electronic now, it happens in seconds.
I understand that, I want to get on that for our benefit.
So even though our bid was what, 286, is that right? A gallon, or was it more than that?
Oh, I don't remember what it was. It was higher than market price at that time.
Today it's 250, roughly.
It was 269 on the schedules for the stations today, the average.
Well, can I ask a question about that, Jim? The letter from Consolidated mentions market price. Market price as quoted by whom? And
that's why I brought that other deal up.
How do we, I mean, I'm not accusing these people of anything. I'm sure they're a fine, upstanding company. It's just that they're saying, trust us, it's only going to be a few cents, a few pennies over the market price. Well, how do we ever verify what the market price is? I mean, it's got to be published someplace. Where do they get the market price?
That morning call.
Well, I'm pretty uneasy with what they say the market price is. Now, I know you may, the expression on your face says you think I'm nitpicking.
Well, no, I don't have a clue. I mean, I can go back and...
He's searching for an answer.
It would have been really great if they'd said market price as set by...
Yeah, somebody.
Because that's what we get in other reports, as set by, and who sets the market price? Them? Somebody else?
Well, I suspect it's wherever they're buying their fuel.
Excuse me,
Randy?
And how do we find the market price? Do you know? Because they find it someplace. Okay.
So if we agree to the contract, are we at 286 a gallon or market price, whichever is better? Is that what we're locking into?
No, it's their...
Locking into market price, or...
Percentage over market price.
Percentage over
Well, it's not a percentage.
Not percentage,
it's
but
some
their
number of pennies.
margin over.
Yeah. You know, our bid is just not written in tune with the times, that's all.
That's right.
Our bid form states it's got to be X number of dollars or cents for a year, and that's not the way it is.
Does the council want to, our tanks are full right now.
Well,
do we want to continue to pursue some of the questions that came up this evening?
I think it's a wise course.
I do too.
Yeah.
So I'll move that we rebid this with a different form. Is that acceptable? Can we do that, Catherine?
Yeah, you can, I'm sure you put in your ad,
Yeah.
retain the
Yeah.
right to reject all bids, and advertise for a floating price,
Right.
and
That
what
is,
their margin or markup is going to be.
Sure.
We have enough gas to get us through for a couple of weeks?
I talked to Mr. Crosby from Consolidated, and what he had indicated was as long as we don't cancel, they're more than happy to come out and sell us fuel effectively under our previous contract.
Good.
And just extend that on. And then if we're gonna, rebid, I will give him a call tomorrow morning and
Ask him if there's a better approach to our bid system in both the ones we put in the newspaper and as these suppliers receive our bid.
right. Well, and the other thing is what verbiage should we be using?
Well, that's what I mean.
Maybe other municipalities too.
Yeah, check what they do.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna based on some floating market, where is it? Where can we get
Right.
a copy of it so that we're all on the same page?
We're putting that in your
Thanks.
things to do column.
Definitely is outdated, there's so much fluctuation these days, yeah, I get it.
Well, that's right. You can't set it in stone.
Predictions out that gasoline will be near the $2 figure by November 15th or whatever.
That's in the prayers of every SUV
Well, it's also an
salesperson.
election, it's an election year.
Yeah.
Well, of course. But anyway, I think we need a better handle on our bid system and verbiage.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just
Thank you.
outdated.
We need a second to your motion. You got it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Now, where are we? New business, request to release access restriction from the development agreement with Jacob Holdings of Hudson for property in the northwest quadrant of Hanley Road and Carmichael Road. Resolution number 10-06.
This was requested by the title company researching the sale of property just south of Menards. Did send a development agreement to Catherine for review. Basically, the only public improvement that was identified in that particular development agreement was the sidewalk improvements. We did accept a check for $12,000 in lieu of that, and which would be a method of payment for what was discussed earlier for the extension sidewalks on the south side. And the access restriction, we originally placed a access restriction of 300 feet. That was really to notify developers that that was an issue with the city. When we looked at the Aldi, F.W. Gordon, Planning Commission specific requested that the city engineers go back, take a look at the stacking distances and so forth at that particular access. We did receive some recommendations for some minor adjustments on that, but the approval was within the 300 foot, but does establish that driveway directly across from Monetary Drive. So it's a safer intersection also. I certainly recommend the approval of this resolution, get this housekeeping item basically cleaned up.
Do you need us to waive?
Yeah.
That's required.
I'll move to suspend the rules. And
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we can go.
For approval of resolution number 10-0-6.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Under D, consider the annual recognition dinner for volunteer members of city boards, commissions, and committees and establish a possible date for the event. I think we should hold this over until we take a look at our budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Request for state legislature to consider health insurance costs, resolution number 12-06. There are other cities that are adopting this type of resolution. Devon was adept enough to take that one resolution and adapt it to ours.
Had one, and they were recommending that they have a advisory referendum on the November ballot to ask the community whether they thought health insurance costs were high. Well, I thought that was kind of ludicrous because who's going to say no? So I felt, sending a letter to the legislature expressing our concerns and asking them to do something would have the same effect. So
What
I
does
tweaked
everybody
it.
think? We just brought it forth to see. Can't hurt anything.
I move to suspend the rules so we can act.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And I move for adoption of resolution 12-06.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nothing in here. Tell
I think it's appropriate to use a 2x4 once in a while, lightly across the head. And so with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We're going to go into closed session. Before we do that, I don't have any specific communication recommendations. The mayor, communications items for future agendas without discussion. Any alderperson? You already had one, O'Connell, which was good.
Danny just mentioned that $12,000. How far can we go with that, Danny? I don't know how.
You'll get an Andrew providing a linear cost estimate, and we'll provide the estimate.
Because then maybe we can use it.
Yeah, sure.
Right now, there's $12,000 available. That's our funding limit, and we wouldn't use so much.
Well, she can give you some
God, I
help on
couldn't think
that.
it'd be that much money.
Anyone else?
I'd like to go farther.
I had a request from somebody in the business park, so if any of you are in contact with the postmaster, the business park is looking for a mail drop, kind of like we have downtown and every other
Parking lot out
place in the parking lot here. And I'm going to lobby to have one there because there's a lot of businesses there and a lot of people would certainly appreciate that, even if it were one pickup per day. So if any of you are in the post office, kind of voice that, Mr. Connell's going to help us with that, and he also told me what to do if they continually say no, which I'm not going to reveal at this particular time.
Well,
okay?
Does it help if we have our picture up in the post office?
I have mine up there already. City Attorney? City Administrator?
Just a reminder that the election, primary election for state offices, and if there's any county offices or not, but is next. Nancy shaking her head, yes.
We're all set for that?
Is next Tuesday. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Wards, districts 2, 4, and 5, correct? Vote here? Yes.
No,
1, 4, and 5.
1, 4, and 5.
Vote at City Hall. 2, 3, and 6 vote at the Government Center.
Okay. Anything else? We want to go into closed session pursuant to 19851C Wisconsin Stats to discuss the resignation of the Chief of Police and reconvene an open session after that.
Move to close.
Second.
We need a roll call vote.
O'Connell?
Yes.
Rademacher?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Morset?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Cook? Yes.